None of the tapers are here. Okay. Anyway, finish up with Mechiras Chametz and go and continue other things in Pesach. So we discussed the kinyanim, we discussed the purpose of the Mechira, how the Mechira works, all the various different things, Alter Rebbe's concept of art of Kabbalah, we learned all that. The last thing we were discussing is what happens if a Jew has a business that sells chametz and he's going to be open during Pesach. Is it worthwhile to get him to sell the chametz of the factory or the business even though he's going to be selling chametz during Pesach? So the question in halacha is as follows. Is that when a person sells his chametz and then he stays open during Pesach and sells the chametz, does that show that he really never wanted to sell it? In other words, it nullifies the whole sale. Or do we say, no, the sale remains a sale. What he's doing is he's stealing from the goy, basically. The difference is, what's the difference? Can anybody buy chametz in that store after Pesach? If it nullifies the sale, then he never sold his chametz. Then his chametz, that chametz shavav olav Pesach, like chametz that stayed over Pesach, in the hand of a Jew, you cannot benefit from it. If the sale is valid, and the point is he's just stealing from the guy, that means what he didn't sell, that you could buy after Pesach. And another question is, or another question, there's a definite, that any chametz he buys during Pesach, the guy has a business, yeah? Has a supermarket. And he buys chametz during Pesach, that for sure is not included in the sale. It's definitely not included in the sale because that he didn't own when he sold the chametz out of Pesach. So the problem, there's a big machlekes in Passover about the first issue. If a guy keeps open during Pesach, does it nullify the mechira, or does the mechira stay a mechira, but he's stealing from the guy? So there's a lot of different opinions in halacha. The way we hold, there's a letter from the Rebbe about it, that Moshe Feinstein, his Tshuva also says the same thing, that the sale stays a sale. In other words, you can buy in that store after Pesach. The problem is he's stealing from the guy. So what usually happens is that Rabbanim, when they speak with the guy, they tell him that if anybody used the chametz during Pesach, you should, forgive it, so to speak, that they wouldn't have to return that money to the guy. But again, halachically, the mechira, the sale still stays a sale, except for those things he bought during Pesach. The bigger problem is, last time we discussed also about if you own stocks in the company, it's not considered owning the company unless you have a seat on the board where you have an opinion, so then it's considered as if you own a partnership in the store. But you have, in today's world, it's very crazy because you can have, let's say, a supermarket is owned by Ralph's, and Ralph's is owned by Food for Less, and Food for Less is owned by a different company. It's like 10 companies until you come to until you come to the bottom line of Ralph's. Okay? So then the shaila is, what happens if Ralph's had chametz in their warehouse? Let's say you can't buy, let's say you could buy from Ralph's.
Overseas.
Whatever. Let's say Ralph's is a store you couldn't buy after Pesach. Okay? So let's say you assume in 2 weeks they replenish all the whole stock. But the question is, if they're replenishing it from the warehouse, maybe the warehouse had more stuff for more than 2 weeks. So the pearl, there's an interesting halacha in Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch says that because chametz sha'avar olav Pesach is midrabanan, it's rabbinic, so therefore rabbinic doubt is l'kula. That's the halacha. So if somebody, let's say, doesn't know was it chametz sha'avar olav Pesach or not, halachically you can assume the suffix that it would be mutter. Now, even chametz sha'alav Pesach is really something which is real chametz. Real chametz. Like flour today has to be treated as real chametz. I mean, alcohol, vinegar, things that are bread, cakes, things like that, there's real chametz. Things that are not real chametz, let's say you might not have candies and sodas and all that, they're not kosher l'Pesach, but that doesn't mean they're real chametz. That is also not asur after Pesach. Chametz sha'avar olav Pesach means halachically things that are real chametz. That then it becomes asur after Pesach. Otherwise, it's not asur after Pesach. So the only things that you have to worry about buying after Pesach is like chametz, bread, cookies, flour, whiskey. Anything that could be real vinegar. It depends what type of vinegar. That would have to be. Then you wouldn't be allowed to buy it after Pesach. What?
Taruv is chametz, huh?
Taruv is chametz. If it's bottled, it's you can buy it after Pesach.
And then flour itself isn't chametz, but flour is water it is, right?
But today, because they bleach all the flour, they wash it actually before they dry it into flour. So halachically, flour today you buy in the store, like a regular bag of flour that you bake challah with. Halachically, that has to be treated as real chametz.
But like if you put non-bleached, non-treated.
Again, you have to know, was there any check all the books, all the books with the lists and everything, they all write that real flour today has to be treated like real chametz. Now there's another shaila. We discussed this very briefly. Some people are makpid not to sell real chametz. Not to sell real chametz. Why? Because they say, is the sale really a sale? Is it a trick? Is it harama? Is it cheat? Is it cheating type of a thing? Is it real chametz? And therefore, many circles, people don't sell real chametz on Pesach. They try to get rid of the real chametz before Pesach. Other poskim right now that if the mechira is good, you can buy real chametz. In fact, there are poskim like Stei Chemed and other great gedolim. They write that before Pesach, they used to buy chametz to sell in their chametz, that after Pesach they should have chametz. They wouldn't have to wait 2 weeks. Now, the way we hold with the Alter Rebbe's Shtar Mechira that we said last time, we explained the whole concept of Vaad Kablan. So our minig is we do buy real chametz. We do sell real chametz. So that, again, that's not... but there are people that are makpid to try to finish the real chametz. The only question is, you have alcohol that could be real chametz. The question, what do you do with, but that many people are making to sell. Huh? You can't, it depends. If you have a Farbrengen, for your Aleph Nissen, and then you have this Farbrengen, then you can finish it. Depends how many people you invite over to do it. Okay, that's it with Mechiras Chametz, basically. Let's discuss another important thing before Pesach, and that is Bedikas Chametz. And let me just give you an introduction to Bedikas Chametz before we learn the actual dinam of it. The Chachamim, again, Bedikas Chametz is rabbinic. The Torah says, Ach b'yem harishon tashbisu sa'or mibatechem. You have to get rid of the Chametz. Tashbis means to destroy the Chametz in your house. What is the definition of destroying? So in the Gemara, there's a machlekes between Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Ein bir chametz ala sreifa." The only way you can get rid of chametz is by burning it. The Chachamim hold hashpasei b'chol davar. You could be mefader v'zeder ruach. You can throw it into the air. You could throw it into the ocean. Because it disintegrates. So the halacha is like the Chachamim, even though people try to do bir chametz, burning the chametz, but the Torah says basically tashbisu sor. You have to get rid of the chametz. So the Chachamim said, B'dikas chametz is midrabanan, basically. Certain times it could be minat Torah, but generally speaking, searching for the chametz is rabbinic. Chachamim said because chametz is around you a whole year, and you're accustomed to eating chametz a whole year. So the Chachamim, when it came to Pesach, were stricter that you have to get rid of the chametz from sight. For instance, there's no such thing as bedikas chazer, to make sure your house has no pig in it or no treif in it. There is no concept of bedikas treif. Why? Because that you never eat. You're always separated from it. Chametz that is, a person is used to it a whole year. So therefore the Chametz said we need to take extra precautions by Pesach to make sure that you don't have actual chametz. Now, biblically, we discussed before, what does selling chametz accomplish? It's not your chametz. The Torah says you can't own your chametz. You're not allowed to own your chametz. Somebody else's chametz you're allowed to see according to halacha. It's not yours. So by selling the chametz to the guy, it's not yours. Now, biblically, if somebody nullifies the chametz, in other words, they make it hefker. They basically say it's my chametz is free for all. Biblically,
It has to be accessible to it.
well, no, I come along and say any chametz I own is free for all. Whoever wants can take it. Biblically, it's not my chametz anymore. It's ownerless.
In my own storage and
But it's ownerless. I said whoever wants can take it.
but no,
1 second. Chachamim came along, the Gemara, and they said, no, because maybe you'll find an expensive bottle of whiskey that you really didn't want to nullify. And, okay, so therefore, what do you have to do? So the Chachamim came and said, you have to do bedikas chametz. What does literally bedikas chametz mean? Bedikas chametz means you have to search for the chametz. You have to search for the chametz in those places where you bring chametz in during the year, because in a place you don't bring chametz into the year, so there's no chametz there. So what do you have to look for? In a place where you bring chametz, makom shemachnisim bechametz, a place where you bring chametz into during the year, so that place needs to be checked before Pesach to make sure there's no chametz in there. By the way, it's getting late, but just in a practical way, that applies to your cars. Cars, people eat in the car. You have to do bedikas chametz in your car. You have a business that you bring food into to eat your lunch. Yeah, if you're planning to go in there during Pesach, you have to do bedikas chametz. There's a lot of places, kids. Now, halacha it says you have to shake out the kids' pockets. Little kids years ago used to put food in their pockets, and there would be mamash chametz, cookies in the pockets. Women having their pocketbooks. All these things. Purse, pocketbooks. People put food into it in your cars, especially if you do carpool and the kids are eating before school, after school, and everything gets in between the seats. You can find a whole menu for a whole dinner there in between the seats, what you find in bedikas chametz. So then, halachically, you need to do bedikas chametz in all those places. Mitzvah Shem tomorrow will continue because this was not even the beginning.